Well, today's episode is going to be a little bit different. This is my first experiences in 3.13. This represents maybe about 3 or 4 hours worth of gameplay. And you may be wondering why I'm landing my ship with my ramp down, and we'll get to that in a moment. But there is something that, I wanted to show you guys. So, one of the big things that's coming, at least one of the big things for the MSR owners, is the ability to do this. To keep your doors open, and it makes walking around in the MSR so much better, and hopefully this is a feature coming in many more ships. But the MSR is such a fantastic ship, such a great ship, except it now randomly explodes. Well, not so randomly, but it kind of detonates itself. It seems that there is a bug, a collision bug on the ramp, or potentially maybe a second issue, but I'm still kind of testing things out, and I don't really go out and just kind of break out a stopwatch or some graph paper and kind of measure these things out. I kind of do it more of an just experiencing it as I play, rather than trying to make any kind of empirical study on these things, as I'm sure you're well aware. But yeah, the back end of the Mercury Star Runner, unfortunately, one of the bugs is that when you're picking up a crate, like a mission crate or something like that, it seems to cause a collision with an invisible piece of the ship that causes sparks to fly off when you're carrying a crate up the ramp. Otherwise, if you're just a player walking up the ramp, it doesn't really do anything. But then there's this other bug that kind of hits you, which is that if you're walking down the ramp, like I'm sure that many of you are used to the idea of, okay, here I am, I'm at my destination. I want to get down there quickly. I want to pick up this thing, or, I got to go and assassinate these guys or whatever. You're used to kind of getting in there, just go, 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 go. And even before the ramp is all the way down, you're running down the ramp. And up until now, that has always worked in Star Citizen, at least with the Mercury Star Runner. But now that also seems to be bugged as well. So I think that I'm not sure that these two things are related, but there's definitely something funky going up with the ramp on the Mercury Star Runner. And seeing as this is the only way in or out of the ship, that's kind of a problem. Now, the first one you're going to see here, it's a blink and you miss it. See those sparks that flew off of the package when I was running it up the ramp? I'm hitting the ship. I'm hitting the interior core part of the ship. And not only that, there's these weird tripping bugs. Where you literally trip and fall on your face, and you experience this as well right here when you're lowering the ramp. And so this injures you. It can cause you to bleed, and it's not just like, oh well, this only happens on Daymar because it's some unique interplay between the gravity and the and the ship, and this isn't something that you're going to experience anywhere else. No, it happens everywhere. It really does. And I've played this on both accounts now, and I've triggered this on both accounts. So it's kind of nutty. The tripping in the front of the ship is a lot harder to kind of replicate, but the ramp problem is certainly it almost seems to be guaranteed. But once again, I was thinking about it when I was reviewing the footage, and it's like, it might just be that the ramp isn't all the way down. But there again, you saw the sparks as I was walking up the ramp. When I go up to the front of the ship, pay attention to the display panel, and you'll see that the core of my ship is now red. So it appears that when you're walking down the ramp or you're walking up the ramp with a package, you're either getting thrown off or you're damaging the ship. And nobody has shot at me. My shields have been up the whole time. I haven't abused this ship in any way. There haven't been any quick escapes into grim hex landing zones, but you can barely see it up there at the top. The core of my ship is entirely red, and I'm about to leave from here on Yella to Chelon to get this drugs finally processed, which is the footage that you saw at the beginning of the video, and just walking down the ramp was enough damage to destroy the ship. So that's a little problematic. But overall, I mean, I love the fact that you can jam these doors open inside of the Star Runner. It really has changed the experience. But oddly enough, when you're in a vehicle, it doesn't damage the interior of the Star Runner. It doesn't do any of these things. Because, of course, after this, I was like, well, got to go get the MT and try this thing out. Because if just walking on the ramp does that much damage, then maybe, like, the vehicle's going to just auto-destruct the ship, but seemingly no issue. And I was able to replicate this and drive this on and off the ship multiple times while taking it out for a bit of a test drive to get some video footage, as you're about to see, and it never caused an issue. But, you know, so I'm not exactly sure what's up with this. It seems to only be triggered when you're on foot, but I mean, it does happen, and hopefully it's something that gets fixed, hopefully very soon. But on to the MT. Of course, the MT was something that I was very enthusiastic about. There are some drawbacks to it, and we'll kind of get into that as we're test driving it. But overall, the idea of combining the AA and the, you know, turreted version of the Cyclone into one vehicle, which now seems perfectly logical, but at the time CIG didn't do, is, you know, it's fantastic. It handles so beautifully, and even though we've spent a moment, you know, kind of highlighting one of the bugs, one of the things that CIG was working on was better ground handling for vehicles, and this vehicle handles beautifully. And I was out there and just jamming around, and I was trying to, you know, kind of throw myself into a jump so the vehicle would turn in midair, because I was basically trying to overturn the vehicle while I was around my ship here deliberately, just to see if that was, you know, going to happen, because it does look top heavy, right? But I was never able to overturn it, and you're going to see me take a whole bunch of, like, skid jumps where the vehicle is turning around, and nothing really triggers a rollover. So, and I'm not exactly all that careful with my ground vehicles, as I'm sure you're very aware. I'm not all that gentle with them. The first video I ever did of the Cyclone was when the Cyclone that I owned, like the original Cyclone, when that first made it into the game, we took it out here to Daymar, not to this specific spot, but another spot that I know of. This is just where I like to go and test ground vehicles now, because the ground is mostly clear and there's a lot of good jumps. But the first time I took it out, I took one little jump like this, and the rear wheels just flew off. And I went, well, you know, perfect, awesome, that's great. But here, you know, I was able to keep jumping and jumping and jumping, and I was jumping off of mountains with this thing, and the wheels weren't coming off. And you're going to see me out there for, you know, a long ass time, you know, just bouncing around like this at full speed, and no visible damage on the interface. And it just drove so beautifully, and it's so fun. The only thing that I would have to say is kind of like a first, like, top of the line problem with not only this ground vehicle but ground vehicles in general, is the total lack of a navigational interface and you know, even cardinal direction references within the vehicle interface. The vehicle handles beautifully, and when you look at this and you think about some of those, like, bunker missions or some of the ground missions that you might have to do in Star Citizen, and we highlighted the vulnerability that you experience when you're on the ground, having a vehicle like this within your ship that you can deploy and maybe hide your ship as much as like 40 or 50 kilometers away where no one hopefully is going to find it, and then proceed in a ground vehicle like this would be awesome. And I'm sure that there's a lot of players who would love to have this, you know, this level of gameplay. Whether it's this or in the future something bigger like a ballista, if you happen to have a Hercules Starlifter, you could actually go on multiple hour missions on the ground. And I know that some people look at that and they say, well, that's not the most efficient way to play for money. But the truth of it is some of us play for money, some of us play for the experience. And I think that would be fun from time to time when you're on your own and you're just kind of chilling and there's nobody else that you have to worry about doing anything else for. You can just do your own thing. I think this would be great. Or maybe you have a few friends and a couple of Hercules Starlifters and you want to kind of park those Starlifters far away from your objective and you want to do an armored convoy across the desert. That could be really, really interesting, right? So I would really like CIG to kind of step up to the plate and get to work. I know that they're doing a whole bunch of UI work, but somewhere at the top of that priority list has got to be a coordinate system or a longitude and latitude system that we can use. Some kind of in-game, planetary surface GPS that we can use to tell where we are, where we're going, how long it's going to take to get there. That sort of thing. Because the fact that the most efficient way to get anywhere is still to just kind of get in your ship and activate, the quantum drive to see all the markers of where you can quantum to. That's the most efficient way to figure out where you are. It's kind of ridiculous. And of course, in a ground vehicle, you don't have quantum drive, so you can't even activate that to say, 70 kilometers over these hills, there's going to be, XYZ mining base or whatnot. In a way, we are kind of reduced to almost caveman level navigation. It's like, you keep driving this way when you see the 2 twin humps on your right, and then the 2 other green mountains come up on your left. Continue for 5 moons forward and you will find, the caribou nesting grounds. It's like, that's kind of, we're reduced in navigation to like screenshotting landmarks, it's like it's 1,000 years in the future and we're like, we're describing things like when the sun is long in the sky and the shadows are aimed this way, keep traveling that way. It's kind of ridiculous. We need planetary surface navigation systems, and yeah, the scanner is not in the best of shape right now. This also kind of got me thinking because I know that there's a lot of people out there who are disappointed that the Tumbril doesn't have an enclosed cockpit to protect you from the environment. And I think that all ground vehicles, space bikes included in this, should actually have a functionality where once you kind of get on the bike, it's kind of like you're connected to the bike at some point. Like maybe there's, just a toggle or a cable or a hose that you just kind of connect together as you're getting on the vehicle. Just one added step to the animation. And what that does is that transfers your life support instead of like the internal suit systems to the vehicle systems. So if you happen to be wearing a certain type of suit, it is still going to be suitable in that environment for a certain amount of time when you're on your own. But when you're reliant on the vehicle to provide you that life support, whether it's cooling or heating, whatever, then your suit is, for all intents and purposes, perfectly suited to that environment. I think that that's a change that we should make. I know that we've discussed, changes to armor, changes to the undersuit. I think it was a commenter on one of my videos who said, make it so that the environmental resistance of your armor is not resident in the armor, but resident within the undersuit, which to me is completely logical because the armor is always segmented. It doesn't cover your whole body, but basically the spacesuit or the undersuit covers everything. That's where it should be. But an interesting trade-off, I think, would be to make it reliant on the vehicle so that you could wear whatever you want, and then you might have a situation where, I have to go down into a cave, or, I have to go down into a river or something like that where I can't take the vehicle, and you disconnect yourself and you go, okay, I've got 10 minutes before I have to go and reconnect myself to the vehicle. That could be an interesting layer of gameplay. That could be fun. So I maybe that's a way that CIG can change the spacesuits, but here you can see me abusing the suspension like crazy. Nothing, not a dent. I love it. I absolutely love it. Honestly, I am very pleased with this vehicle. And once again, for those of you who don't know or maybe are unaware, that gun on the turret, it's a size 1 gun. It's, the gun that they give you is kind of crap. But you can change that for any other size 1 gun that will fit there. So, or obviously a size 1 gun will fit there, but any suitable size 1 weapon is, I think, what CIG said. So you could put a Gatling gun on there, you could put a laser weapon on there, you could put a distortion, fragmentation cannon, whatever. Wait, no, I think fragmentation cannons are elite, aren't they? Yeah, so that is pretty amazing. And, one of the big things that's been coming up a lot in my feed, and I've been kind of doing a little work around preparing for it, is of course the release of Elite Dangerous Odyssey. But one of the things that Star Citizen, even in its troubled state where a lot of its ground vehicle movement or a lot of its vehicles have been broken or unable to transport to anywhere relevant, that sort of thing, one of the things that Star Citizen does have over Elite, and I'm not talking about a theoretical feature that's coming in the future that we haven't really seen yet, but one of the things that Star Citizen definitely has is that ground vehicles in Star Citizen are 1,000 times more fun to operate than in Elite. Nothing triggers the TISM more in me than those stupid SRV buggies in Elite Dangerous. I hate them. So you can imagine how much fun I have going out and getting engineering materials when, I don't. It's just a constant battle between, just gotta get this done. It's like, and I am just so friggin' triggered right now. Who would make it like this? This is, moving on. So yeah, Star Citizen, much better ground vehicle control, much better ground vehicle movement. Of course, third-person camera. If you're the driver, it's the way to do it. You get so much more detail, so much more idea of where you are. But that's not really, I don't think that's really CIG's fault. It's just the reality of, a first-person view when it's always limited to the size of your monitor. And of course, one or two people out there might have, the big wraparound monitors, and well, good for you, but this is so much easier to drive this way and so much better. And it kind of says something about some of the UI that's in the vehicle, because none of it is really necessary to get any of this done. So when CIG's out there, and if you guys are watching this video and you're doing all your UI work, most of the stuff that you have on that UI in there, basically pointless. Don't need any of it. The gun, though, the one thing that I would like to see change is right here when you step up, just put a couple of little slots to put in some cargo containers. They don't have to be big, just the little mission boxes. That's something, either that or kind of make it like a modern day tank or armored vehicle where you just have these little baskets on the side where you can kind of drop these things into and just put a latch over them. I mean, if I were living in the Star Citizen universe, I'd take the cutting tool and I'd make the baskets myself and just weld them to the side of the vehicle. There's no reason not to have them, because that is kind of one of the big issues with this, is that you could just make them into steps off the rear, or you could just hang them over the rear wheels, kind of like fenders. There's no reason not to have, a little storage space for mission, like the little handheld mission boxes on these vehicles. There's no excuse not to have it. So that is something that should probably go on this and many other ground vehicles to be implemented very, very quickly, because we are at a point where that's a thing that we need, right? That's kind of an issue. When I was thinking about it afterwards, I was like, I wonder if you can just kind of stick something in the passenger seat and it'll just stay there. But that is something I'll test in the future. I believe the baseline version of this vehicle, the Tumbrel Cyclone, just the basic version, does come with a small cargo area in the back of it. And one of the things I kind of want to experiment with, because the only other vehicle I can think of off the top of my head that I have, or at least have a version of, is the Drake Dragonfly, but that doesn't have its cargo implemented yet. One of the things I want to do is I want to kind of, in a situation like this where you have to go to a site like a crash ship or whatnot and pick up a thing, I want to bring a ship like a Mercury Star Runner or something more substantial that would haul a vehicle like this. I want to bring it to within 50 or 100 kilometers of that landing site. And then I want to proceed, obviously it'll be easier to navigate with a mission marker. I want to proceed in on the ground and see see what that experience is like, because, when we were talking about being kind of trapped on the ground on foot and highlighting some of the deficiencies there, I wonder what it'll be like to do it in a vehicle, and I wonder what it'll feel like to traverse very long distances, when you have to deal with ground obstacles and things like that in a vehicle, if it makes the mission not so much more financially rewarding, though that would always be welcome, but more personally rewarding, more fun of an experience to kind of go on. So I think that's one of the first things that I'm going to do as we kind of stroll into 313 properly, is I'm going to go out and pick up a baseline version of the Tumbril Cyclone once I get off and confirm that it does still have that cargo space in the back of it. I seem to remember it, but maybe I'm thinking of something else. I don't know. And I want to kind of do some long haul missions across the ground. Not some full-on Mark Watney, 1,200 kilometers across the surface of Mars over a few weeks. But, I want to kind of test out some of that long-distance travel on the surface of a planet and see how that kind of changes the mission experience, if it makes it safer to do missions that way. And to be perfectly honest, this is a lot of fun. This dune buggy riding is really great. And, yeah, a hell of a better experience than doing it in Elite Dangerous, which is still it just kills me every time. So, some bugs, some issues, and I'm sure we'll find more as 313 goes on, but good job, CIG. Good job.
Watching. If you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in the Star Citizen Squadron 42 development, please follow us on our social media channels.